Welcome to the Melodology Podcast, celebrating the unsung excellence of melody makers. I am your host, Arthur Brewer. I am a composer and I love melodies. And today we have a special guest to me. We have Brian Woodbury, who I know because of a song that he wrote that makes me cry and laugh every time I hear it. And you'll laugh at this because it's a song sung by a mouse on the show Bear in the Big Blue House. The song is Dear Grandma, and it's just adorable and lovely. It takes no more than about 2 minutes, and in that period of time, I laugh and I cry every single time I hear it. So let me tell you a little bit about Brian Woodbury. Brian Woodbury is a Los Angeles composer, lyricist, and bandleader. He writes art pop, quirky indie songs, postmodern concert music, comedy songs, country music, stage musicals, and music for children's TV. He has released 12 albums under his own name or one of his ensembles. Most recently, he completed the 4-volume Anthems and Antithets magnum opus with a release of Volume 4, Rhapsody and Filigree, an album of art songs, experimental pop, and progressive rock. Completed over the pandemic, each volume in the Anthems and Antithets series is a double album in a distinct musical mood: comic, confessional, political, and arty. Welcome to the Melodology Podcast, Brian.
Well, thank you so much, Arthur. It's a great pleasure to be here. I love the idea of looking at melodies and dissecting melodies and see what makes them tick and what makes them move us and or amuse us or whatever. I think it's just such a great focus.
It's
So
a really fun thing to do too, and it's such a mystical, magical thing that these notes in certain arrangements make us feel things when they're combined with chords and lyrics and all
mm,
these different things.
absolutely.
And that they have their own personality, they have their own distinct feel or flavor. It's just completely amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your background in music. Start with early memories of music and melody.
I was always very focused on melody when I was, as a little kid listening to, when my parents would play like Don Giovanni or the Beggar's Opera or something like that. So I was very much, I was focused on the tune to a fault, probably because it wasn't until well into high school that I started thinking more about the bass lines and the rhythmic accompaniments of things. But yeah, I kind of the usual getting into the Beatles when I was, a little kid, and wanting to play like the Beatles, so learning to play guitar and starting writing songs pretty young, around 10, and just kind of going with that and just keeping, being a little songwriter. I studied music at University of California, Santa Cruz, and then transferred to University of California, San Diego, which was more composition and more sort of modern avant-garde composition. That was the focus in San Diego, and I was always on the sort of quirky pop end of things. I always wanted to do stuff that was a little off center and sometimes experimental, but always sort of in the pop, in some way in the pop realm. So
How would you describe your musical influences, or what would you say your specific musical influences are?
there's a big theater influence. So I would say, the classic Rodgers and Hammerstein and Sondheim and all that kind of thing. There's the Beatles quirky pop kind of thing, like the post punk, like XTC and Elvis Costello and all that kind of stuff, which I feel like that's kind of where I kind of come from. But I also, was very into modern classical stuff. Like I was very big into Luciano Berio and Ligeti and people like that. And then I listen to a lot of 20th century classical music these days because I'm a huge Prokofiev fan
Oh, yeah.
and Richard Strauss, and but my favorite composer is Brahms. So I guess those are some influences. Tom Lehrer was a huge influence
Oh,
of
yeah.
mine, and I ended up getting to know him. I studied in Santa Cruz, and he was my professor, and he taught this great class in musical theater where we performed like little readings of classic musicals. But he was a huge hero of mine from like junior high.
Yeah, the amazing thing about Tom Lehrer is that he's got this amazing crossover between very, very body songs that a
Yes,
lot of people just know him for the body songs, but he also wrote music for children's television.
he did. He did. He wrote stuff for Electric Company, I think.
hmm Things like Silent E and
Yeah,
so
it was
forth. He
great.
wrote
Yeah.
these educational pieces of music, which I also often think about for example, Schoolhouse Rock,
Oh yeah.
where the intention of the music was specifically to create an education, to create lessons
Yeah.
that kids could remember,
Yeah.
because kids could remember the songs and the melodies from all the pop tunes of the time, but they were having trouble in school. So, it
Yeah.
just makes sense. Music is a way to get past your barriers and to kind of get activating other parts of your brain that aren't necessarily involved when you're sitting in class being taught a lesson,
Yeah.
which is
Absolutely.
it's a great way of bypassing our guard, I guess is a
Mm-hmm.
way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Music is a really good way to get past all of our defenses and kind of reach inside our
Absolutely.
mind and our soul.
It is. Well, it's a manipulative art form in a very and it can be benign and it can be not benign. So it's very powerful because it
Right.
it engages us in a way that nothing else does.
Yeah. So for the idea of benign versus not benign, I can think of examples right there. Benign, you're watching a movie and you want to be engaged in the movie,
Yeah.
and the music in the background of the movie is helping you along in the emotions
Mm-hmm.
of what you're supposed to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a not so benign way is in a political ad
Yeah.
where no matter what the topic is, they start playing this dramatic, scary music in the background
Mm-hmm.
to create fear in you
Yeah.
about whatever topic it is in that political
Yeah.
ad. So that's a manipulation that you may not even be aware that that manipulation is happening.
Yeah.
You might not be thinking about the fact that, oh my gosh, I'm feeling scared because of the music. You're thinking, I'm feeling scared.
Yeah.
And you're not paying attention to music because we are just culturally basically trained to not pay attention to music when it's on, when it's
Yeah.
being played and we're looking at a screen.
Yeah.
That music is mostly ignored unless the people involved on the screen are actively engaged with that
It's
music.
true. Yeah. It's sort of the tyranny of the visual. We're predisposed to give that precedence. And so it does a disservice to the sort of sound world that we really also live in.
Do you have a usual process for creating a song? Because I know in some cases they'll come up with words and want to fit the music to the words, or vice versa. They'll come up with a melody that they really want and try to fit the words to the melody. Do you have a specific way that you approach it?
I do both. I generally work from a title. I often come up with ideas for songs like when I'm on a bike ride because I like to ride my bike in the morning. Things come to me. So I'll come up with probably title and then maybe some lyric ideas and maybe some musical ideas. What I prefer to do is write the lyrics, have all the lyrics, and then write the music. But I find lyrics harder than music, and I
Mm.
tend to have just lots of music kind of just coming to me at all times. And I'll jot it down, I'll record it on my phone. And so you know, I have an archive of musical ideas. And when I set lyrics to music, that process is just kind of easier. When I've got a piece of music and maybe some lyric ideas, it's harder to fit the lyrics to the music a little bit. I do think though that the music is slightly better if I've come up with the music first. It's
Hmm.
like 5% better music generally than if it's just music too. I mean, I'm perfectly satisfied with how the all the songs have come out, but I just find music first is a little. Music tends to be a little better.
And you work with lyricists. In fact,
I do.
I don't know how the song that I mentioned, the Dear Grandma song, which just is so dear to me, I don't know how you created that. And who was it you created that with?
That was with Peter Lurie, one of my favorite collaborators. That one we both wrote both. As I recall, I was working at home with this is when I lived in New York. I was working at home and maybe came up with a gist of an idea and sang it to him over the phone, and then we got together and worked out more details. But that one was, yeah, it was a lot of just back and forth, and it was not like I wrote the lyrics and he wrote the music or vice versa.
Right.
It was very mixed, which I liked, which I really love to do.
When I invited you onto the podcast, you had not just like one melody that I really want to look at this, which has been the case with a number of people who I've had on the podcast. You brought a list of like 8 different things that we could talk about. And every single one of them was an interesting melody. And we finally sort of narrowed it down to 2, one which is kind of more of a classic, older tune, and one which I guess now we could start calling a classic because it's basically like 30 years old at this point.
Yeah.
And that is A Whole New World from Disney's Aladdin.
Yeah.
That's written by Alan Menken with lyrics by Tim Rice. Let me go ahead and read about that. And there's actually a lot to read about this because it was a very successful song. A Whole New World is the signature song from Disney's 1992 animated feature film Aladdin, with music by Alan Menken and lyrics by Tim Rice. A duet originally recorded by singers Brad Kane and Leah Salgana in their respective roles as the singing voices of the main characters Aladdin and Jasmine. The ballad serves as both the film's love and theme song. Lyrically, A Whole New World describes Aladdin showing the confined princess a life of freedom and the pair's acknowledgement of their love for each other while riding on a magic carpet. The song garnered an Academy Award for Best Original Song at the 65th Academy Awards and a Golden Globe for Best Original Song at the 50th Golden Globes Awards. A Whole New World also won the Grammy Awards for Best Song Written Specifically for a Motion Picture or for Television at the 36th Annual Grammy Awards, as well as Song of the Year, the only Disney song to do so as of 2023. In that same year, the version sung by Peebo Bryson and Regina Bell was also nominated for Record of the Year and Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocals, winning the latter.
Wow.
So this is back. That's just the original. That's not even getting into the remake of Aladdin recently.
Right.
The song obviously affected people and was, it was a big, big hit at the time. And it's a beautiful, beautiful song. It's really interesting. What was the first time did you see this in the film?
Yeah. Yeah. My wife and I went to see it. We were New York hipsters, and we still had a soft spot since we had seen Little Mermaid. My wife had watched it on video, and she's like, "Brian, this is actually good. The music, the songs are good." And I'm like, "Oh, come on, Disney cartoons." And then we had seen Beauty and the Beast in theaters, I guess, or we had sneaked into a theater to see it one time in Brooklyn, and so we were like, "Oh, wow, this is good. This guy is good." So we went and saw Aladdin, when it came out, right when it came out. And I remember that song just bowled me over. We were just like weeping listening to it. My wife and I are holding hands and I said, "That's our song." And we went to a party with a bunch of sort of downtown New York musicians, and I was just raving to everybody. I mean, there's a song in this new Disney movie, and I swear, it's such a great song. So yeah, I was floored by it.
Yeah, it's funny that we kind of poo-poo the idea of a Disney song being really well written.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I kind of had that mindset a little bit even starting this podcast, because the very first episode of this podcast with Christina Rusnak is looking at the song from Frozen,
Oh yeah,
Let It Go.
yeah, oh yeah.
And I thought, oh yeah, great. We're going to look at this song and it's going to be, it'll be a throwaway, and sure. And then we looked at it and it was just fantastically composed.
Yeah,
It was
well done.
so well written. And
Yeah.
I know for a fact, I've always known that Alan Menken writes just amazing, amazing music.
He does.
From Little Shop of Horrors up to Little Mermaid and Aladdin and on. He just kept writing these big shows with just the most amazing melodies in
Yeah.
them that really just they stick with you
Yeah.
and they kind of infuse into you as you're listening to them very, very quickly. And then after you've heard it once, you're in love with it.
Yeah.
And of course, in Aladdin, they play that melody over and over and over again a bunch of times to make sure it sinks in. But the song is written in a way that it sinks in
It
anyway.
does. It does.
Anything else you'd like to say about it before we start taking a look at it?
It shares some DNA with Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony. Da, da,
Ah,
da, 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 da,
I hadn't thought of
da.
that. Yeah,
And that I think that that's somewhere in the background of the composing process.
absolutely.
Yeah,
All right, well, let's take a break and we will come back and we will start taking a look
sure.
at A Whole New World. Welcome back to the Melodology Podcast, celebrating the unsung excellence of melody makers. My name is Arthur Brewer. I am your host, and I am here today with a really amazing songwriter, Brian Woodbury. And we're going to be looking at and listening to A Whole New World by Alan Menken, lyrics by Tim Rice. So let's just do the same thing that we usually do on the podcast. For people who would like to view the video, you can view the video on our Patreon. Brian and I are going to look at the notes and listen to the melody as it's playing. And we're going to walk along this melody just as if it's a path that we've never seen before. And we're going to see what we discover along the way. So here we go. I'm going to stop right there.
Okay.
So you had already mentioned it having that sort of pastoral symphony thing
Mm-hmm.
along with Beethoven, that
Mm-hmm.
ba da da da, that is staying in a single chord and it's kind of moving around a little bit around the notes of that chord. I like that it's starting on the third of the chord.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things where we've talked about melodies on the podcast, how often a melody starts out on the main note of the chord or main note of the key, and then eventually comes back to it. And a lot of times songs don't start on the main note of the key and they try to find the main note of the key as the melody is going along.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
I like that it's starting on 3 and it's going down to 5. It's not really staying
Mhm.
on the key. The key is established
Right.
and it's kind of moving around the tonic, but it's not actually starting there.
Not
What are you
starting or
seeing
landing
so
there.
far? Yeah,
Well, the motivic da 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 da. That you're sort of establishing that gets elaborated later in the chorus. So it's very classical to me.
yeah. I also am noticing that the rhythm, it's specifically set to have a little bit of an offbeat in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Da 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 da.
Yeah.
Da 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 as a
Mm-hmm.
pattern that's
Yeah.
established right in that first measure. All right, let's play just a little bit more and see what we discover as we're going along. I'm going to stop there.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing?
Well, clearly it's A, so we're getting to the variation on the opening phrase. Uh, I love the little the da da. You've already got this longing, that's it's presaging the chorus kind of ideas, but I love songs where you've got a little hint of the chorus in the verse melody,
Mm-hmm.
but it's sort of the more constrained version that will then blossom and explode in the chorus. So it's like we're hinting at these sort of things, but that we're saving the best for last. So
Right. And you don't necessarily know what was composed first. You don't
no,
know the composer could have come up with any particular element of a song and then constructed it so that you're hinting at these things that are going to come
yeah,
later. You're hinting at them intentionally by including them in earlier parts of the piece. We've got a repeat of that same offbeat rhythm, da, 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 da,
mm-hmm.
happening twice there. And the other thing I'm noticing in measure 4 is that you have the same two notes as the very beginning of the melody that are just stretched out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're also sort of leading down now. If this was just going as a scale, we would just go right down to one, or we could just go right down to one. It's just
Right.
3, 2, what happens next?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's find out what happens
Let's
next.
find out.
I'm going to play the whole thing through, and I'm going to go all the way through 8 measures this time.
Okay, sounds good. It's gorgeous.
I know it is just beautiful. Even just the melody and the chords, it's just beautiful. So what are you seeing as we get to measure 5?
Well, it's it's again using the da 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 da, but now stretching it out into a longer. It's what my composition teachers would call the A where you take the first two phrases and then you take that first phrase, but then stretch it out into a longer phrase.
Mm-hmm.
What do I see? I see lots of stuff,
Well, I'll point out that as I was saying in measure 4, I was thinking you could go just 3, 2, 1
right,
and land on the tonic of the key.
but we're
But
avoiding it.
what Menken has done here is he's actually changed the tonic note by a
Hmm.
half step. He's raised that note up a half step.
Yeah,
So in that next measure, you can't even land on it. It's a
yeah,
surprise
hmm,
that you've got this accidental in that next measure.
yeah,
You have this same rhythmic thing. So he's within 5 measures, he's repeated one rhythmic motif 3 different times.
hmm,
But you're right. Then he just extends after measure 5. It's 3 measures that are kind of one long line, kind of all wandering around the tonic note. Because in measure 6, you get the tonic, but you're not on the tonic chord.
no,
And then in measure 7, you end up dropping down again to
yeah,
5. You
yeah,
kind of keep
down to a
wandering
five.
around that home note, but not landing there.
Yeah, we're avoiding it. Yeah,
It is this beautiful wandering around of that melody.
yeah,
The beginning of measure 6 is another 2 notes down, similar to the beginning of the piece and measure 4. So we've got that kind of downward thing happening, but it ends up being added into more stuff.
yeah,
We have, I think, knowing what's coming later, I think we have another hint at the chorus in measures 7 and 8,
yeah,
because we have a step up and then a leap of a third and then a step down and a leap down.
yeah.
So let's keep an eye on that. And, I don't like spoilers, but I think that's a spoiler to what's going to be happening when we get to
It's
to
a
the
good kind of
chorus of the
spoiler.
piece.
Yeah.
It is. All right, so let's go ahead and start on the second line of if this was going to be a poem, this is actually the second stanza of the
Right.
poem, I would think. So this is now starting on measure 9. Let's just talk about those 7 measures that we just looked at. It is a literal repeat until you get to the last note, what was the last note in the first stanza.
Mm-hmm.
You now, instead of going down to the 5,
You're on
you
the
go
third.
up to 3.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of ending on the A, we're going up to F. So instead of this,
Mm-hmm.
we have this.
Yeah.
It kind of suspends the melody a little bit more. When you end up on 5, you want to kind of go back to 1.
Right.
And here, it's being suspended basically on 1.
Yeah.
It's kind of holding you in this place where you're on the 1 chord. You're not landing on the tonic note, so it doesn't quite feel stable yet.
Yeah.
But we're landing back on that chord in this weird situation where, okay, we're on 3. We've kind of felt like we've established maybe a landing place, sort of. But it's the same exact notes up until that last one. The lyrics are different, so somebody listening to the song isn't probably going to think, oh, this is exactly the same notes a second time.
Right.
They are thinking about what the words are, and they're paying attention to the fact that there's something being said here. But looking at it musically, the only difference between those two lines is that leading note into the last measure of each 8 measures.
Yeah. And it's really setting us up for the chorus. Just landing on the D on the tonic chord. But I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it's really setting us up.
I do want to point out that in this case, something that Alan Menken really does in his songs. We've talked about other songs. So, for example, Over the Rainbow has music that's written before Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Before you get to that beautiful
Right.
long line, there is this music that's written for the song that comes before that. But nobody knows that. And it was really it's almost written as an afterthought. The meat of the song happens at that beautiful chorus, really,
Right.
that comes along, which in the case of Over the Rainbow is really it's the main verse of the piece. The main hook of the piece is that main verse.
Right.
With Menken, he writes verses and choruses both that are spectacular.
Yeah, this is a verse chorus kind of song, whereas Over the Rainbow is an AABA kind of song.
Yeah,
Chorus.
and he writes his verses and his choruses both to be just absolutely brilliant. He has this beautiful verse that just carries you all the way up to when you get to the chorus, which is
It,
about to happen.
if he stopped there, it would almost be enough.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song, just the way it is.
Yeah.
And now we're really about to go on the magic carpet ride.
Right.
So I'm going to just play the last 4 measures up into the chorus. And I'm probably going to stop just a little bit of a ways into the chorus. So
Sure.
don't get too attached as you're listening to this, folks. It's going to pause again. All right, so I'm going to stop us there. And I actually went a little longer than I thought I was going to. So at the spot where the lyrics are a whole new world, and then there's a long held note. What's going on here?
Well, to me, the thing that feels so satisfying there is we've avoided the 5 chord pretty
Ah,
much for the whole verse. We've just every time you kind of would go there, he goes to the relative minor stuff. He goes to the 4 in places that you might think someone would go to the 5. He's avoided the 5. So when the 5 comes, it is a whole new world. It's right. We're actually and I think that's a really good useful tool in songwriting is the avoidance of one of the major pillars of the tonality.
hmm
Avoiding your 5 or avoiding your 4 or avoiding your 1 even can be really, really useful. And it's like you're being deprived and you don't know you're being deprived. And then when it happens, it's like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was there.
I didn't think of this, and I even put this lead sheet together and followed the chords from the piano music that's available online. You're completely right in those first 8 measures, actually first 16 measures. The 5 chord is just hinted at the very end of measure 8.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there long enough to kind of bounce you out and bounce you right
Mm-hmm.
back to 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think about the fact that now that you're in measure 17 and you land on 5, why does that sound so amazing and sound so different? It's because we haven't been there yet.
Yeah. And it's, wonderful, nice, long held note for the singer to really, milk.
Something else that I am noticing from having listened to this song several times before the podcast is there's a line during that long held note. And this is something as composers and songwriters we have to know. You can't just hold a note and have nothing else going on most of the time. There's very few situations where you can just hold a note and have no other interest happening over in this case it's 5 whole beats of stuff. There's a beautiful line that Menken puts in there between that 5 and that 1 chord that kind of underscores that long held note. And it really is something that I feel is missing as I'm listening to just the lead sheet.
Yeah, yeah.
My ear wants to hear that filling in that space.
It's another Beethoven sixth derived accompaniment figure, I think.
Hmm. And let's look at the notes, the actual order of the notes here. Throughout this whole piece, there's not really anything that's a huge leap at this point. It's very singable. We have jumps of a third or a fourth. And in this new space that we're in, we have, first of all, we have the first note that's held, really, that's not an ending note. You have the first beginning note that's held for a long time. It's held again for 5 beats.
Yeah.
But then to get to it, we have almost just steps up. So when the words are a whole new world, a whole is F and G, world is on A.
Mm-hmm.
But to get there, there's this little leap past it.
Mm-hmm.
So a whole new is up to a B. So it just kind of jumps past it and comes back, which has been a pattern. The kind of jumping up and coming back a step is a pattern that was established back in measure 1. That's our
Absolutely.
motif, is to jump up and come back down a step as part of that.
Yeah.
So there's hardly any melody going on here. I'm just going to play just that measure, those 2 measures. That's it. That is the hook from this song.
Absolutely.
And all it is it's 4 notes. It could just be 1, 2, 3 up, but the
Mm-hmm.
thing that kind of makes it even more beautiful is the leap past and coming back
Mm-hmm.
down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. So then moving past that long held note, we have back to a little bit more of a patter, back to some more notes that are kind of taking us around and in different places, but it doesn't go very far. So let's just listen again to just starting at a whole new world. It's repeating the same pattern of a whole new world, and then it's getting the kind of offbeat thing that's similar to what's in the first measure.
In the verse, yeah.
Yeah, in the very first measure of the piece, it's similar to that, including some similar pattern to the arrangements of the notes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of moving down from 5 to 3. It's wandering around a little bit, but we end up on 3 again, that we had been on when we started the chorus. Not going very far.
No.
I'm kind of gobsmacked, I guess is a good word. I am just stunned to realize that this beautiful spot from this amazing song is so completely simple.
So simple, yeah. We're also avoiding the tonic note
Mm-hmm.
here, saving kind of that for later in the chorus. So yeah, there's sort of deliberate going down to the third, but not to the tonic.
Yeah. I also want to point out, unlike a lot of other songs that we've looked at, where the melody from the very beginning is moving up and down in an arc, this is staying very, very static. In the beginning, it's around 3. It starts on F sharp in the D major scale and kind of stays there. I mean, at the beginning, it kind of drops down to an A, but it comes back up to that third note. Each time it wanders back down to the 5th note without going to the 5 chord, we can point out. But then when we get to the chorus, we get up as high as an A, which we've been at A before.
Yeah.
Actually, have we? No. Up until now, that's a good point.
That's right. No, it's the
We
highest
have
note, yeah.
not gotten to the A.
Yeah.
We've gone up to G in every single verse and in both verses so far,
Yeah.
but we never got
never
up
get
as
to the
high
A.
as A. And then at the beginning of the chorus, we go a note above, we go up to that B,
Mm-hmm.
and we come down to the A. So even with it being a whole new world of being in the 5 chord, we're also in a whole new world because we've reached 1 note higher than we've been before.
That's right. Right.
It's not very far, but it is a big difference in terms of the fact that we hadn't gotten to that spot yet.
Yeah. No, it's nice to have the sort of constrained range that when you branch out beyond it, it feels fresh.
Again, that's another songwriting thing of, if you're holding off from getting to a chord, that's going to make a difference. But if you're holding off on getting to a particular note, that when you get to
Absolutely.
that note, it's going to be fresh as well.
You got to save those notes.
All right, let's play the starting at the beginning of the chorus, and I'm going to go through. We'll go a little farther. We'll see how far we go. I'm going to stop us there. I can see that we're about to head back into a repeat of some
Hmm.
stuff from the chorus, but we've now reached up really, really high. Now we've gotten all the way up to the leading tone of the scale, the C sharp, with these beautiful downward dropping lines.
Hmm.
What's going on here?
I
It's
mean,
completely new.
it's so filled with longing and just sort of ecstasy.
It's reaching, but not quite getting
Not quite
someplace,
getting there. Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
And it does kind of bounce off the tonic note again, but an octave down. So it's like reaching for someplace familiar in a distance, but then not being able to get to
Hmm.
it. And it's really interesting that that line is repeated verbatim, basically. Those two measures with that downward line
Yeah.
are repeated exactly the same.
It's a seduction song, or maybe not even a seduction song. It's a song about, in the Disneyfied way, it's a song about young lovers consummating their love in some way, sexually, but and in the only way that you can sing about it in a Disney song is so that it works on many levels. But it's like their whole new world is this kind of new relationship that they have. So the song is filled with that sort of the wonder of discovering this aspect of life that maybe you knew about, but you've never really experienced. So I think that's a part of the power of the song, and it real the sort of sighing. Da, da, da,
Hmm. It's very much a sigh.
yeah,
It's a longing sounding motif right there. It's a very reaching and longing and then reaching again.
yeah,
And again, not quite getting to there.
right.
So that repeats twice. And then the measure after that, nearly an octave down, actually a fifth down from where we were before, we have three downward notes again. Even though they're a little bit rhythmically done there, you've got this pattern that he's created right there for the first time of three notes down, three notes down.
Mm-hmm.
And he echoes that in three notes down in the third measure
Right,
of that
right.
line.
Yeah.
And very much set us up again for a repeat of that main motif of the chorus. So let's just start at that high sighing line right there
Mm-hmm.
and see where that takes us going into the next round of the chorus. I'm going to stop us there.
Yeah.
We have very much the same thing going on. It's a repeat of the first line of the chorus. And again, it's pretty much exactly the same notes, although there are some slightly different chords changing the ground underneath your feet, as it were. That's you're still in the same pattern, but there's something different holding it up.
Right.
I'll point out in both the written versions that I've seen now, at that second point where it would be that sighing line down, where it
Mm-hmm.
goes three notes down and then drops and then
Yeah.
reaches up again to those three notes to come down. They go up to the
We
tonic
go up to the
just
D. Yeah.
just for a moment, not
Just
on
glancingly. Yeah.
one, yeah, kind of bouncing off of it. And we definitely have a very solid, you can see the three notes that are happening
Mm-hmm.
in the third measure there, that's after those two long sighing lines. You can
Mm-hmm.
definitely see that that's very much an echo of those three notes from the previous two
Mm-hmm.
measures.
Very much so. Yeah.
And then to my eye, it kind of expands, it stretches that basically a turn right there where it goes F to E to D to E again, that downward and back up a step, then kind of just stretches it a little bit wider for the last measure before the end of the note. When
for the cadence.
you finally get a cadence, you
Yeah.
finally get to land on the D chord, the home chord of the piece, on the note D, landing on the tonic chord.
Do you feel, Arthur, that when we're getting to that sighing figure, the fact that we get up to the D, it just kind of becomes a little more playful at that point, or it feels less longing. It's more like, I don't know, just seems playful.
Yeah, in my mind, I imagine it along the lines of, well, and this is funny because thinking in terms of the movie, Aladdin has the magic carpet. So he
Yeah,
has the tool to, to take Jasmine away, as it
right.
were, to show her the whole new world. So the longing is there, and he's kind of just in my mind, it's like he's just teasing that, hey, look, it's easy to get there.
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
just I can get there.
yeah.
And it does kind of feel that way. It feels playful and light, and it almost gives the impression that even though it feels so far away, look, it's really not that far away. It's right here.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Well, then one of the things that I put in the harmony, Aladdin sings right here because Jasmine's singing those notes on that last line that we were
Right.
just in. She's singing that part, and then she sings "A Whole New World with You," and he starts singing a different line
No.
that I thought was important enough to
Oh, so
include
important.
here because we're also going to be going into change of key. You can see at the end of the line of the music here, we're doing a key change.
It's one of my favorite transitions. It's just such a beautiful little melodic thing that happens there going into the new key. I mean, I'm sure it was probably just let's do something to get into the new key, but it uses that motive so nicely.
So let's go ahead. I'm going to play just that last line, and then I'm going to go ahead and roll into the next part of the piece so we can hear what's happening. It's a very clever key change. It's
Yeah.
just really smart. And it's instant. It's one of those situations where it's not really any kind of a cadence. There's no chord structure that leads you into the F chord from the D chord, where they have shared notes, but there's nothing really shared about where we've been to where we end up when we start this new spot. It's just this really clever transition that comes out of nowhere.
It's elegant and inevitable.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like you've just been wrenched from one place to another. And I think it's specifically that line. That's why I had to put those notes in there to point that out. Those notes give you away the E to the D down to the C, which is now the new fifth of our key. So we've dropped down, E to D would just be from 2 to 1. But we've dropped down below that to the 5 of the next chord, but it wouldn't work without that line in there. If it was just, a D chord and then jumping to an A chord, that wouldn't happen.
Well, there's also, interestingly, on the cadence, he briefly goes to a C major chord,
Mhm.
sort of a Mixolydian thing, or like a 4 of 4, just before we get to the 5/1, and that in some way that kind of introduces that tonality, sort of a little out tonality that ends up being the 5 of the
Yeah.
next
I,
key.
I hadn't even thought about that. I've
Yeah,
noticed that chord,
yeah,
and it's a chord that I find myself using a lot when I'm writing music and writing songs, and I almost
sure.
feel like I overuse it, so I'll notice when I'm using that.
Yeah,
That's the flat 7
yeah,
chord.
the flat 7 chord.
I love that sound, and I was raised with so much music that uses that flat 7 to 5 to
Sure.
1 sort of
Yeah.
thing, or flat 6, flat 7, 1,
Hmm.
and it's just part of the natural language of music to me. I didn't even notice it there. I was so excited about all the other stuff going on in that line, and then the getting, this key change that's coming up. I missed the fact that, yeah, we have a solidly different chord there.
Yeah.
It's outside of the key completely. It's not even kind of leading anywhere into the key. We have, and this is what we're talking about, is right here when it gets to a whole new world. That right there, it's going to be the fourth measure. I'll play right up to it. That chord is outside of the key completely.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about the fact it's the 5 to where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I wonder if that's something that was thrown in there as a potential, oh, hey, we could go up to there because we've
Yeah.
gone on the 5, or
Mhm.
or where that comes from, or if it really is part of the idea of it being a whole new world, talking about this whole new world.
Yeah.
You're on that chord that's in a whole new world than anything else we've been with.
Yeah. It's hard to know where it comes from. I mean, it's that little section there is almost gospel-y in a way, some of the chords,
Mm.
the first inversion chords and stuff.
And also we have, we have a lot of chords going on in that spot. We start out in that line and we're landing on the tonic chord in the first position. It's got the F sharp as the bass. So
Yeah.
you're kind of almost home, but not home
Right.
for those first two measures. It's kind of leading you there. And then you do this progression, B minor to E, the next natural chord in, using the circle of fifths, going up from dominant to tonic and, upward in that upward fourth kind of leaps, B minor to E to A.
You think you're going to have an A, but
Yeah, you expect to have this chord from this. So here's the B minor, here's E, and then here's A. You just expect that that's kind of where it's going. And he throws you for a loop by not giving you that in that measure. He gives you at the end of the measure, but at the beginning of the measure, you have this C chord.
yeah.
So here's that progression right there. I love that line. That
Yeah,
line
me
is just
too.
so
It's
beautiful.
gorgeous.
And all it is, it's just leaping up and coming down a little bit and leaping up and coming down a little bit and leaping up and coming down a little bit, which is a beautiful way of rising up. It's in this case, it's kind of going farther and coming back down. We've had melodies where we talked about the idea of going down a little bit and then jumping higher up, and then
Mm-hmm.
going down and then jumping higher up to make the leaps bigger. In this case, it's like a reach and a fall, and then a reach and a fall, and another reach and a fall.
Like cascading salmon
Ah!
going up the locks to the spawn.
Exactly, very much like that, where they're leaping up higher than they need to go and then coming back down to where they need to land to be climbing the climb that they make. So then we have the same thing happening in the new key. We have verse and chorus again happening in F now instead of in D. There's not really much of any difference, I think. We can play through it and see if we hear a particular difference or see a particular difference. Let's go ahead and do
Yeah,
that in
let's
the new
listen.
key. I'm going to lead us into it because I love that line so much.
Yeah, good.
And I'm going to stop it right there because we do have some things that change at that point. What I want to point out here is we've done what really looks like now is verse, verse, chorus. And the chorus is nice and long. The verses are about 8 measures each. And the chorus is probably 16 measures when we're over here? Yeah,
Yeah.
so the chorus is a good solid 16 measures plus a little bit at the end for the new line to transfer us in. And then we just do one verse.
We do the B verse with the second ending.
Right. So it's shortened the time. It's given us more energy to get to the chorus. It's
Mhm.
shortening the time and giving us the reward more quickly.
Yeah.
But I'll also point out this is only the third time that we get the verse,
Right.
and how catchy, how sticky is that
It
verse
really is.
that you hear it again the third time and it's got those repeats in it that makes it catchy, but you know what you've got there. And then you take us into the chorus, and in the chorus, it's still very much the same thing until it gets to the spot where it repeats the chorus. And this is something they did because it's a duet.
Right.
They start overlapping the lines of them singing.
Yeah. They sing different lyrics at the same time, which is an odd choice, I think. But
Yeah, it's an odd choice, but also previously there had been a little bit of stuff going on where they're singing on top of each other.
right.
In fact, in that verse where they're now in a new key, there's actually a counterpoint line that he is singing, I believe, as she's singing her music, and he's talking about "Don't close your eyes" and things like that in the
Right.
words, which I didn't put in because they don't feel as important to the melody to me. They're adding energy and adding excitement.
That happens. That "Don't You Dare Close Your Eyes" happens in the second chorus.
It happens in the second chorus.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So when she sings "A Whole New World," he sings "Don't You Dare Close Your Eyes." Hundred
Right.
thousand things to see.
Hold your breath. It gets better. I think he sings while she's holding
Yes.
that. Exactly.
Yeah. So there's other stuff happening in there at the same time, but to me that definitely feels like it's background to the main melody. It adds the energy, but I don't personally feel like if that wasn't in there, like it would just
Yeah.
ruin the song.
No, no, it's not essential, but it for the scene,
Mhm.
it gives the feeling of this irrepressible excitement that they have. They're both, sort of caught up in this moment, and they're kind of interrupting each other while they bask in this moment.
Then when we get to the repeat of the chorus, or the repeat of that first starting notes of the chorus, not actually a repeat, the second part of the chorus, he sings over the last few lines or last few words that she's singing, and they use the end of the first rather than just ending on the first note and one person singing into the next part. We have this spot where he starts singing "A Whole New World" while she's singing "I Can't Go Back to Where I Used to Be." So that's right. "I Can't Go Back to Where I
Right.
Used to Be" is right here. And again, they're singing stuff on top of each other in that space.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's reaching higher again, just the fact that we're in a higher key.
Yeah.
Now everything is even more longing and is more stretching and more reaching. And then I usually don't do this on these, but I put in the harmonies because the harmonies are just really beautiful here. They both sing the same line together, but on two different notes.
Hmm.
The harmonies are just, of course, really beautiful. And this is another thing that will happen in songwriting and song arranging, where you just add things and add layers and add new interest and stuff as the piece gets, further and further along. To
Yeah.
keep people engaged in the song, to give it more energy as it's going and as it's moving, you would save harmonies like this. Of course, save them for later in the piece. You don't throw them right in at the beginning all the time. And they are just really, really beautiful harmonies.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
And we end what seems like it should be on a tonic chord, but we have a deceptive cadence right in this measure here.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we feel like we're about to get home, but that part, the magic carpet is pulled out from under your feet, as it were.
We'll get a little
And you don't
delay.
land on one.
Yeah.
You have a deceptive cadence right there, called deceptive because you've been deceived by the composer.
You
He was
have
promising
been.
that you were going to get back to one. And in fact, previously in that exact same spot, we landed on one.
Yeah.
The only other spot in the whole piece where you end up on one chord at this point. There's no place else that's happened. The one place that is provided as an example it works the way you expect it to. We still have that flat 7 chord, the measure before, so we have this little kind of turn in the progression that's leading us to 1,
Yeah.
but you're just expecting to land on 1 there, and you don't. You end up suspended temporarily.
Yeah, and I also like to point out you were mentioning the harmonies. There's some really nice open fourths and things in the harmony that you fourths and fifths, which are kind of a no-no sometimes,
Right.
the parallel fourths and fifths and open fifths like that. But I think it really works really nicely.
Yeah, it does work really beautifully. I think partly because the chord, that flat 7 chord is unexpected. It's
Yeah,
not really in what you expect for a traditional voice
no,
leading.
no.
And yeah, looking at the voice leading on here, and the notes are actually turned upside down. He's singing farther down. I put his line on top of hers here.
Right.
But yeah, you have parallel fourths or parallel fifths, or you have a fifth to a tritone,
Yeah.
which would get you a red mark if you were doing that in voice leading class. But it does sound really beautiful, and it's just their 2 voices, and it's just for the moment there.
Yeah.
So it ends up working really nicely in that spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't do this in class, students. And that's adding the different layers and adding the different things in here at this point to make this spot so poignant. And then when you're thinking you're going to be home, you're suspended. And this is also kind of like the end of the ride, as it were.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit poignant that things might be coming to a close. And then we have kind of repeats of the line. Now, in this spot, one of them sings and one of them echoes. So I think he sings
Yeah.
at the beginning and she sings the next measure. I didn't put her part in here because I
Okay.
noticed that she does that, but it's very much an echo. And the
Okay.
reason I kept it this way, we're just looking at the main line here
Right.
from the melody, and this is the same thing that would be in the sheet music. Without the echo of the music, let's go ahead and play from that deceptive cadence. I'm going to move into the deceptive cadence because it's just so beautiful again. And that's when we finally get to the end of the piece. We finally land on 1 on the 1 chord.
Yeah.
But compositionally, I thought it was interesting here because you have that motif, the 4 notes. All it is 4 notes, a whole new world, those 4 notes, a step up, a leap of a third, and then a step back down. And it repeats now 4 times right here, but it's repeating faster and faster. So it's played out once, played out again, then played out twice in the same period of time.
But interestingly, we've also the harmonic rhythm has slowed way down, so we'll have very few chords, and the whole feel kind of slows to almost like a halftime thing. So it's like you mentioned, it's like a ride coming to a close. It's very much the lovers after making love. It's got this very kind of summation of
It's got an afterglow to it.
yeah,
Yeah,
afterglow. That's exactly it.
and to me the amazing thing right here is just using that same line repeated and repeated over
Yeah.
different chords.
Yeah.
So let's just play that one more time. It is really beautiful hearing that line repeated
Yeah.
and having the circumstances that it's repeated in each time being slightly different. And something we've pointed out a number of different times on the podcast, again, talking about the line of the bass.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, that deceptive chord is a D
Mm-hmm.
minor. Again, that's the 6th chord in an F major scale. But the bass line goes from D to C
Mm-hmm.
to B flat
Mm-hmm.
to A to G, then back up to being on A, back up to B flat, up to C finally, which is the 5. So it wanders all the way down and up a scale there, gets back up to 5,
Yeah.
and then takes you down to 1. And this is really the only place where you've had a measure of 5 to
To a
a measure
to
of 1
yeah.
that's not the chorus.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
the beginning of the chorus. It's the
Yeah.
final part of the chorus, the final part of the whole piece, rather than teasing you to get to the 5 chord. And we've never heard the 5 chord yet. Here it is. Now you have this nice long 5-1 at the end.
Yeah. So elegant.
It's it's just completely amazing.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. Looking at it, it just feels like there's hardly anything there. But it's so much stuff going on behind the scenes and so much craft put into it.
It's such a journey in
Mm,
one little song. I mean, and just the fact that they hammer that motif home at the end, just repeating it. It's so insistent and it's just so satisfying.
yeah, it's amazing. Menken is he's just an amazing, amazing melody writer and songwriter. Just
Yeah.
fantastic. Anything else you'd like to say or point out about the song?
Every moment red letter is one of my least favorite lyrics. The lyrics totally work, and in the movie, in the scene, it totally works. But there's some stuff that feels like, what rhymes with better? I know, red letter. And so it's kind of amazing that you can have these kind of clunky lyrics and it still works because the song is so beautiful. So
Hmm. Makes me very much miss Howard Ashman,
yeah,
who was the lyricist who worked with Alan Menken prior to Tim Rice.
yeah. And I think he died while in the middle of while they were making
Mm.
Aladdin. So I think there are some Howard Ashman lyrics in Aladdin. But then after he passed away, they brought in Tim Rice. Nevertheless, it's a gorgeous,
It's still a
gorgeous
beautiful song.
song, and I will forgive the every moment red letter.
All right, let's take another break and we'll come
Sure.
back and we will talk about what's going on with you.
Excellent.
Welcome back to the Melodology Podcast, celebrating the unsung excellence of melody makers. I am Arthur Brewer, your host, and I am here today with the amazing songwriter, Brian Woodbury. And I say amazing because not only are you have a lot of craft in the songwriting, but you've been doing this a lot. You have a lot of music that you've written, a lot of very beautiful, very catchy songs.
Thank
And
you.
you are working on a current project. Tell us about what you are working on right now.
Well, what I'm working on now is a project called Anthems and Antithets. And it started with over the pandemic, I made 4 albums. I put them out every few months, and I'll actually show it to you for those who are looking at video. It's in
Beautiful.
a nice little package. It's 4 CDs or 4 volumes. Each of them is a double album, and they're each in a different musical mood. So the first one is sort of the comedy one. It's called Levity and Novelty. So it has comedy and novelty songs. The second one is called Balladry and Soliloquy, and this is sort of the more personal story songs. And then the third volume is Antipathy and Ideology, which is sort of political songs and songs about the state of the world. And then the final one is called Rhapsody and Filigree, and it's sort of the arty one. This is art songs, art pop, experimental. There's a prog rock mini rock opera that's 9 minutes long. There's a full setting of the Latin Mass in about 8 minutes. So I tried to do a very short setting of the Latin Mass. It's called Brief Mass. So anyhow, all in all, there's 88 pieces of music. It's like 5 hours of music. And I finished that last year and sort of did worked on it all in a big whirlwind while we were all locked down. But since I finished it, I've also been making music videos because one of my other loves, besides songwriting, is making movies or specifically music videos. So there are 88 songs. I've made 41 music videos so far. Some of them are fairly simple, just the lyrics and some images. and some of them are more elaborate. And now I've got 47 more music videos to finish so that I can have a music video for every song on this project. And I've got a handful of very elaborate music videos that I want to shoot. And so I'm doing a crowdfunding because I can't really do those, realize those particular videos without an actual budget. One of the videos is going to be a comic book come to life. So we're going to I've got a comic artist who's going to make a comic book. And then we're going to use the images from the comic book and sort of explode them as the music video. And that song is like a 9-minute mini rock opera about based on the myth of Theseus. So that one's sort of the most elaborate one, and I've got great artists working on it. So, but it's going to cost something. So that's basically at 88 songs and
88 songs composed within a 2.5 year period, basically.
yeah, from 2020 through the about the middle of 2023. So
Wow.
so it
So
was
yeah,
a
so everybody who's feeling like they didn't get anything done during the pandemic, you're rubbing that in, but also you did take advantage of the fact that you had the time and you had the space available to be
absolutely.
able to do those things.
Yeah.
We've had other guests who did, similar things. I know Kim Osberg started writing solo pieces because she couldn't write things for ensembles because ensembles couldn't get together. So she started creating little vignette pieces that she could have soloists play and soloists record.
Yeah.
And so you did the same thing. You worked on your craft, you worked on stuff that you could create. And you that's I mean, 88 songs in 2.5 years through 3 years ish is really an amazing. So I say you're prolific. You are absolutely prolific. You write songs like a lot of people breathe.
Well, it was interesting because when I took on the project, I wanted to do things in stylistically. I tend to be kind of all over the place. I tend to change tone from song to song on my recording. So one song will be, from the point of view of some sort of obnoxious person. I'll adopt a character for the song, and then the next song will maybe be perfectly sincere, and it's maybe a little confusing to people to listen to an album of mine where the tone changes so drastically from song to song. So I thought maybe I should do, confine one sort of tone to one
Mm.
album and one tone to another album. So I don't know how successfully that is because I still like to change things up. I like to hop from one genre to another. But nevertheless, that was the impulse to do that, and the fact that we were locked down just gave me the excuse to just work on it all the time. And also everyone else was locked down, so it wasn't like I couldn't call up my violinist friend and say, "Can you record violin tracks in your studio?" And the trumpet player, "Can you record trumpet tracks in your studio?" So everyone was locked down, but we were all still working and doing that kind of thing. So
Well, you have a few different pieces here. I do think we can play any of the songs that you gave links to. I think we can show some diversity by playing parts of each of them.
oh, cool.
Uh, so which one would you like to listen to first?
We could look at The Brain,
Okay.
which is a comedy song, sort of in the inspired by Tom Lehrer.
Hmm.
It's a song that's sort of a send up of some of the simplistic interpretations of neuroscience. In other words, you read an article that says playing the piano actually changes your brain. Like that's like okay, I'm not surprised that my brain is changing when I play the piano. I imagine your brain changes with everything that you do. But the idea there's sort of an understanding, a pop understanding of neuroscience that somehow the brain is in control of everything rather than your whole self being in control and also interacting with other selves and other things. So it's a philosophical thought. Anyhow, I thought I should make it into a song where I just kind of mock the idea that neuroscience explains everything and anything. So it's neuroscience both explains away why someone is a psychopath, to also why someone has religious, spiritual feelings, to why people fall in love. So it's kind of just a straw man argument against the simplification of neuroscience. And
Which is a very Tom Lehrer kind of thing to do. He was poking holes in all sorts of things, as well as occasionally trying to be shocking or
yes.
just, outright ridiculous. So let's listen to a little bit of The Brain.
What makes the loathsome psychopath hike a path of evil, exploring every cruelty and excess? To spike the punch with ipecac or microwave a weevil, the cause has long been anybody's guess. Just how can he achieve the satisfaction that he wants from biting chickens' heads off with sadistic nonchalance? What fills him with the savagery to thrill from causing pain? We now know that the answer is his brain. Aha! His brain makes him do it. His brain makes him do it. It makes him vivisect his victims, then extract their suet. So do not cast aspersions, he should not endure the stain. The fault lies not with him, but with his brain.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause that there. That is really so much fun. The rhymes in there are clever and a bit ridiculous in cases. Very much tongue in cheek, but very clever the way you would put different words in there. I know there's other lyrics later on, like makes their pituitary pituit. Plus, by the way, congratulations on the video with that, with the very Schoolhouse Rock kind of animation in the background of different brains doing different things. It's also a very clever, fun, upbeat style, almost a vaudeville sort of a
Yeah, I
moment.
think of it as kind of what Tom Lehrer often called Frank Lesser's Mickey Mouse kind of harmony. And then, of course, I have to credit the arranger of the piano and the player of the piano was Peter Lorre. He basically came up with the whole accompaniment thing. So, and we worked together a lot on stuff.
And that's the same person you worked with on Dear Grandma.
It is, yeah.
All right.
Frequent collaborator of mine.
So that one's, I assume that one's on the third album?
That one's on the first album, the comedy.
Oh,
album.
comedy. That's right.
Yeah.
Comedy is first. Politics is third.
Politics comes third.
All right. What would you like to play next?
We could listen to Going Through Emotions.
All right. Let's listen to Going Through Emotions.
Every time I find the strength to think about you nowadays, it hits me like a fresh Katrina wind. I do my best to stand up straight and meet the storm head on, but all the while I only pray the storm will end. You left me out here spinning with my heart tied in a knot. I'd chase you, but this hurricane's the only ride I've got. I hide in shame and I rage and flame like I'm trying to tame 1,000 oceans. I'll curse your name, then I'll take the blame. Your life sails on while I'm just going through emotions. I'm just going through emotions. Seems like only yesterday this cyclone took our big and easy life and blew it all to who knows where. But nothing's really different. I still dance around the truth and keep my blinders on, laugh like I don't care. Though a storm was always brewing, I pretend the coast was clear. But when the wind begins to blow, your name's the only sound I hear. I hide in shame and I rage and build a house with sticks and stones, believing it's enough to stop a torrent when it finally hits the shore. But then the clouds come rolling in, the dark descends, and suddenly you find you don't believe that anymore. I ought to go and look for you and leave this wreck behind, but the storm that chased you out of here is still roaring in my mind. I take my aim, I thrash, I maim, like I'm trying to tame 1,000 oceans. I stake my claim, but all the same, you're gone, gone, gone. You're good and gone, and I'm still going through emotions. I'm just going through emotions. I'm just going through emotions.
That's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
The form of the rhymes on that, where you have a part where there's 3 lines that rhyme and then a 4th that doesn't. It intrigued me to see that because you're almost expecting you've got these very similar rhymes on very short lines, and then you get to the 4th line and it doesn't. And you're thinking, what's happening here? And you don't get the payoff until you get to the next end of the next stanza, I guess.
Yeah.
And you have the final rhyme for that 4th line.
Yeah. I have to credit my co-writer who wrote, I think he wrote all the lyrics for the verse and co-wrote the lyrics with the chorus. So my co-writer is John Thomas Oakes, another very frequent collaborator of mine. And unusually when we write together, sometimes he writes lyrics, sometimes I write the lyrics, sometimes he writes music, sometimes I write the music. This one is all my music, but he had the idea. Usually when I write songs with people, I come up with the idea and say, help me out with this song. But when I work with John Thomas Oakes, it's often, he has an idea or I have an idea. And this was his idea about this sort of character who's volatile and been made more so because of undergoing, being in a hurricane. And so he's lost his significant other, not because he just was too hard to be around. So his significant other has kind of left him because he's too volatile. So the rhyme scheme was something that I just wrote music to, that but I thought it worked nicely.
Yeah. Would you like to listen to one more?
Sure. Let's
have to, but we can.
It's The Smile He Took Away.
Yes. I like that song. So let's just go ahead and do that. Here is The Smile He Took Away.
She used to light the room. She'd share her smile so freely, a laugh for everyone, and I was hers completely. But she was never mine. So much I wanted to say, I guess I missed my chance. For that sweet smile he took away. At first he came to stare, so tough and yet so helpless. He found her welcome eyes and burned until she melted. Too soon, it was too late. I never asked her to stay. By now I should move on, but for that smile he took away. Still smiling in my mind, and I'm still hanging on to that lifeline, that once in a lifetime Guess what? He broke her heart. She's gone where he can't find her to try and start again and put that life behind her. I saw her in this bar. She's just the same to this day. Same voice and hair and face. All but that smile he took away.
What a beautiful song.
Well, thank
What a
you.
really sad outcome to the song that, this person who is so happy at the end of the story isn't happy, and the
Yeah.
person who's in love with her is seeing how she's changed.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out that your melodies are really beautiful. Your voice is fantastic, by
Well,
the way. Your
thank you.
voice is really nice. And I want to point out that this reminds me of other songs that I've heard that you've written.
Uh-huh.
This one specifically, the way that the melody line works and the way that it works with the singer, in this case you, it's a very comfortable feeling. The melodies almost sound like something you've heard before, but
Uh-huh.
not quite. They
Uh-huh.
feel familiar, and at the same time, they're interesting as you're listening to it. In this, one thing that I really like also is the way that you have a very conversational way. I don't know if this was lyrics first or melody first, but the way that the notes are sung, that you're starting the sentences on an offbeat,
Mm-hmm.
moving into things, it it's very spoken and very relaxed sounding, very natural sounding.
Well, thank you. I was very much listening and writing or trying to write country songs when I wrote this one. It's also there's a lot of James Taylor influence
Hmm.
on this song too. His big James Taylor fan for long going back, so a lot of that seeps in there. So yeah, it was music first, but the line, the smile he took away, came with the music, and I kind of tried to figure out a story that went with that, and
Hmm.
just getting back to the whole idea of country songwriting, it's all about the story, and it
Mm-hmm.
is more conversational. And I was not a stickler for perfect rhymes in this song, so there are many off rhymes, and I think that which is the standard in country songs is
Yeah.
they don't go for the strict rhymes, and I do love the strict rhymes, but sometimes there's a time and place for being a little casual about it.
Something else in country songs that this one very successfully does is it takes words and it takes your phrase and makes them mean different things in different parts of the
Oh,
song. So at the
love that.
beginning of the song, the smile he took away is the smile that the other guy took away because he took away the love interest
Hmm.
of the person singing.
Yeah.
And then at the end, it's the smile he took away because he made her not want to smile anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's another successful thing. In country western music, a lot of people, find country western music to not be their thing. I love country western music and I love the lyrics in country
Oh,
western music because
absolutely.
they're just so clever so
Yeah.
often.
Yeah. They're like 2 minutes and break your heart, you know.
Yeah. Like Dear Grandma. Thank you for that. All right. So, how can people help support you with the fundraising you're doing to create these videos for these songs?
Just go to brianwoodbury.com, and if you donate a small amount, you can get a PDF of the comic book that we're going to make. You get a thank you. You get thanked on all the thank you pages of everything, and you can get a DVD or a Blu-ray, a 3 DVD set or a 3 Blu-ray set of all the videos when it's all complete. You can get an actual physical copy of the comic book when we publish it. So there's a lot of little goodies, and I didn't even mention the 47 music videos. I'm going to be making them all within a year because I like
Oh,
to give
wow.
myself deadlines. So 47 music videos and a comic book in a year. You
It's
can go.
averaging nearly a video a week, so that's going to
Yes,
be
it will be.
quite a year. And so people can find you at your website, and Woodbury is Woodbury.
Right.
Where else are you available online?
I am on YouTube, Brian Woodbury Music on YouTube, and I'm on TikTok, kind of on Instagram. Don't do too much there, but mostly YouTube, and the website is
Very
the
good.
best way to. And there's all my videos are on the website, so you can check some of those out. There's
Excellent.
almost 100 videos up there right now. So
Well, thank you very much for joining me today. This has been a treat.
well, thank
I will
you.
make sure that we have links to everything for you, including Dear Grandma,
Great.
on the show notes. And I am Arthur Brewer. I am your host. My last name is spelled Breur, and I am Arthur Brewer on all the social media. The Melodology Podcast is melodologypodcast.com. And on the social medias, it's all just Melody Podcast. Thank you again, Brian, for joining me today. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Arthur. It's been a pleasure for me too.
And everybody, please come back and listen to the next episode of the Melodology Podcast, celebrating the unsung excellence of melody makers like Brian Woodbury.